Good evening. I would like to welcome everybody here this evening for this group. We're getting together, let your voice be heard. And so anyway, I wanted to thank everybody for being here. Hopefully we'll get more people coming in. As they come in, they can space out and find a place to sit. I want to say that the Blue Springs Human Relations Commission is excited to host this opportunity to bring citizens and leadership together to address concerns of Blue Springs residents. Our goal is to begin a conversation that will lead to actions that ensure all Blue Springs citizens are provided an equitable opportunity to grow and to participate to the best of their ability in our economic, educational, political, and social systems. We have some guests who have agreed to share their experience and concerns and expectations with our city leaders. We want to thank them, first of all, ahead of time for sharing. And I want to reach out and thank the leadership, Mayor Ross, Chief Muntz, council members for being here with open ears and open minds. During the course of this evening, we will expect all discourse to remain civil. We may have to limit speaking times for our guests. If so, this will be the signal that you have 1 minute remaining, and Courtney has a sign over there, you got 1 minute remaining, and she'll put that signal up if we need to. And what we will do is there will be a question answer session near the end of the program. With that said, I would like to introduce the members of the HRC who are here this evening. Myself, Gino Bueno, I'm the co-chairman. Courtney McGinnis, if you raise your hand. Courtney McGinnis, Lucas Taylor, and Shauna Squire. Those are the current members in here. And also Dr. Emmanuel Nagumsi, the consultant for the HRC out there as well. We appreciate him. Before we get started, what I'd like to do is we'd like to take a moment of silence, you're invited to stand or kneel if able, as we take a moment of silence for 1 minute in recognition of the social injustice that's going on right now. So we're going to take 1 minute to do that right now. If you don't want to get down on your knees or you want to stand, that's up to you. But we're going to do 1 minute so that way it provides us more time to visit. So at this time, we're going to take that minute. I know that the mayor just had total knee restriction, so we'll take a minute here. Thank you for that moment of silence. Please be seated. Okay. At this point, we would like to open the meeting up with opening the mic to Mayor Carson Ross to speak. And we're going to give you 10 minutes or as long as you need, because it looks like we got plenty of time for people to speak. So you go ahead and
well, if I talked about everything, it would probably take all evening, but I'm not going to do that this evening. I'm going to have a respect for your time. I want to thank the HRC for putting this forum on. I take a lot of pride in the HRC because this was something that our former police chief and Wayne McCoy and I worked on having an HRC, because prior to me being mayor, we did not have one. It was strongly suggested by the Department of Justice that we do. So we worked with Dr. Gomsey and the Justice Department to create the HRC. And so I'm very proud of the work we did. There's still a lot of work to do. And as a point of reference, I understand growing up and living black. I grew up doing segregated times in Arkansas. And although now it has come to the forefront because of cameras on telephones, that a need across America is we can no longer be in silent, because then I think you become a part of the problem, is we have to address it. Now, it doesn't have to do all with police departments. Now, what you see is the police. You see that on TV. It's happening in corporate America as well, except nobody is killed. So we need to have the focus on the totality of the issue. If you're not black, you probably, things that you take for granted, black people can't take for granted. For instance, if you have a son, you have the talk. And what that talk is you teach your son, and I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but I'm going to say it's fortunate. I didn't have any sons. I had all daughters. So, but you still have the talk, but not as much as your sons. Is these are the things that you do if you're stopped by a police officer. We had this, I have one grandson. So I made sure my daughter had to talk with him, and they live in Georgia. And I have the talk with him when I see him too. If you're stopped by a police officer, you put your hands on the steering wheel. Don't make any sudden moves. If you have to get your driver's license, let them know, I have to get my driver's license if you want to see it. The talk, and I'm not going to get into all the specifics on it. I don't know how many non-black people have the talk with their children. It's something you take for granted. Hey, your kid go out. My grandson plays football, so he's a big kid. And I'm not sure they're going to have a season. In Albany State is where he's going to college this year, Virginia State last year. He has a vehicle on campus. So my daughter and I are telling him, you and the other football players don't have a carload of football players with you, because that's going to signal possibly profiling. If you see these big black guys in a car and it's more than one or two of you, you might become suspicious. So don't do that. Maybe have one friend in the car with you instead of two or three of them. So those are things that we have to address. And you know, and it's sad that it took George Floyd in Minneapolis, the young lady, last name Jefferson, I'm not going to even try to pronounce her first name, in Fort Worth, Texas. We had Eliza McClain in Aurora, California. We had Breonna Taylor, which Oprah is putting a lot of effort in right now in Louisville, Kentucky, to bring this to the forefront. But here's the thing that I have to think about. Because you have cameras on phones right now, all this stuff is being captured. You see it across America. How many times has this happened through the years before we had cameras to where it was recorded? It just didn't start with the things that you see on the camera. It was happening before then. And there are ways that you can address that. We need more people of color to become police officers. You know, that's a conversation that the chief and my city administrator and I have a lot, is we want that to happen. When you're in suburbia, a lot of times it's kind of hard to recruit people because they can go to Kansas City and make more money. Here you probably don't have as much danger though. So we got to convince people that, hey, it's okay to come to Blue Springs and be a police officer, because what we do with our police department, we have diversity training. There are do's and don'ts in our officers, and if there's a problem, we address those problems. And occasionally, as mayor, I get complaints. I get a hold of the chief and the city administrator, and we pass it on. They investigate. We talk about it afterwards. So we have transparency. We don't hide anything. And so me being the person that I am, we want Blue Springs to be the very best it can be. And if we have a bad apple, you remove the bad apple before it spoils the whole barrel. And police officers have to police themselves. They know when there is somebody within their group is not doing the job. So we need to put protections in for those people to be able to come tell the chief. We got somebody that's not doing the job like they should be. They're not listening to the sensitivity or diversity training that we're being taught. So I think because what happens is if you get that bad apple, it's going to give everybody a bad reputation, and they don't deserve that. They do not deserve that. So anyway, again, I spent a lot of years in corporate America, and believe you me, there were some things that went on in corporate America. I'm going to give you just one example. If you know me, you know I'm a pretty assertive person. But in the corporate world, I was known as arrogant. That's a key word. Instead of being assertive like my partners were, I'm arrogant. That sends a negative connotation. So there are little things that happen in the corporate world too that needs to be changed. And hopefully with the focus that we're getting right now throughout America, people will start to change the systemic problem that we have today. So anyway, again, I'm going to quit there, Mr. Chairman. I could go on all night, I could preach the chairman, but I tell you what I do. You can read that in the book I'm going to write after I'm old. Now, don't say I'm old already, because I'm not. Okay, I'm done. Back to you.
Turn my mic back on. Okay.
There you go.
There we go. Right now, what I'd like to do is we reach out. We have some community members or citizens from the community who wanted to speak this evening, and we'd like to start that off right now with Chris Green and Raven Wright. Are you guys speaking together, or okay? So I'll just pass that on to you.
Yes, my name is Raven Wright. I'm 17 and I go to Blue Springs.
I'm Chris Green. I'm heading into my senior year at Blue Springs South.
This was very important to us because we are students that have not come from Blue Springs. We come from the city. And with the city, we've seen things that Blue Springs just doesn't provide for us. So we know that this is a better opportunity for us when it comes to a living environment and when it comes to us being in school. I can't speak for Chris, but I can say that I agree with the mayor, and I can definitely say that my mom has given me and my brother the talk. The talk isn't something that black kids or black people should be experiencing. So it's important to us that we set aside time for like this, because we really shouldn't be having meetings like this. You see, people don't understand that we live in a world where equality shouldn't be something that we're demanding. All of us are different in our own ways, but we're so much alike. We all wake up, we all eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We all go to work, we all go to school, we all come home to families. So why are we dividing ourselves?
So, I guess I should have started off because she kind of hit home. I'm gonna add on to that a little bit because when the mayor said the talk, it really hit, because the talk was taught since you can be able to read and write and listen and comprehend, and the lesson just gets added on the older you get. You know, I've been out here for about 4 years. My 8th grade year I moved out here, and you know, I never really had to face, you know, I never had to really reenact, like act out on the talk. And then I come out here and I'm thinking it's supposed to be safer, you know, because it's Blue Springs, it's the suburbs, you know, education, athletics, suburbia, whatever. And then I get to school out here and I'm like, whoa, it's a shell shock. I get accused of molestation my freshman year. And they come to show, I get suspended and come back, and it was found out that I was innocent. Nothing, no acts was done. It still won't get taken off my record. I didn't even get an apology. And they admitted that they did the investigation wrong. All because somebody lied. That's not cool. I'm called aggressive at school because I keep my head down. I move on about my business because my first encounter with y'all, I couldn't trust it. So it's just like out here, it's supposed to be where you sell this dream where like you can be free, you can be heard as a team, but in reality, you can't. And that's what me and my colleagues' goal is. You know, the Human Relations Commission. Why can't we have a teens Human Relations Commission between all the suburban schools, all the suburban districts? Because it's not just here, it's everywhere.
Would you give Raven and Chris a big hand there for speaking out? Right now, I would like to have Casey come to the microphone, and you can walk up to this mic up here if you want to, and just tip the mic towards you. Is it already turned on, or do they need to turn it on? It's turned on, okay.
I want to thank you guys for putting this on. This is great. I think it's something that Blue Springs definitely needs. I think mine's more questions than it is anything else. Hopefully you guys can help me out with some of this stuff. The AG put out a report on the racial disparities of pullovers in the state of Missouri and by community. If you are in the state of Missouri and you are a black person, you are about 2 times more likely to get pulled over than a white person.
Could you get just a little closer to the mic?
Yeah, sure,
okay,
no problem.
There you
Sorry. However, in Blue Springs, you are 3.2 more times likely to be pulled over as a black person than a white person. And 85% of our population is white. And that just kind of blows me away that we're seeing those kinds of numbers. I know Kansas City's sitting at about 1.5, which is great. You said that they are doing diversity training. I don't know how much they're doing, but if it's a couple hours a year, that's not enough. We need to see more. I'd like to see more. It would be nice if we can get those numbers down to at least the state of Missouri. If we can get down to Kansas City, even better. The other thing that I've seen on police officers here in Blue Springs and other places, but right now we're focused on Blue Springs, is the blue line flag. You know, the flag, the United States flag means so much to so many people. And to see the blue line flag on somebody's vest, and I haven't had a bad situation with a police officer here in Blue Springs, but seeing that blue line flag, you know, the blue line has a negative connotation, historically speaking, of officers protecting other officers when they've done wrong, and that you don't cross that blue line, otherwise you're going to get treated poorly. And you're going to be kicked out of the force a lot of times, or you're going to be ridden so hard you're going to leave the force. You know, it's against flag code for the United States. It's seen more of a political statement than it is representing the entire community. And then how many times have we seen in these rallies with white supremacists that flag flying right next to the stars and bars? That's not good. It's not a good situation. It puts us off as a Blue Springs community in the incorrect way. Our officers need to represent the entire community, and that blue line is more of an us versus them situation than it is I'm here to protect everybody. And so I'd like to see those be replaced by American flags on vests if possible. That's my personal opinion though. Thank you very much.
Gino, did you want me to respond to that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, I didn't know if you want me to wait to the end.
No.
But I believe it's Casey? Yes. Thanks, it was all good points. One of the things I want to address first is, I tried to take some notes, is the disparity index, because we talk about that all the time. And that comes up annually. And I'm not sure why, why they want to target Blue Springs sometimes. I get our numbers high. I have some issues with that. One, first of all, we're a nationally accredited agency, so we have certain standards that we have to meet, and I think like 800 and some standards we meet annually. So we meet those. Those involve policy, issues, training. One of the things we do is our implicit bias, cultural diversity training. We do that annually. And you're right, it's 3 or 4 hours a year. But it's 3 or 4 hours a year that some other departments aren't even doing. So we do that, and we meet all of our training standards set by the state. So we do that, and we do a little bit on top of that, depending on the year. We have different guest speakers come in. We've had Dr. Gomsey, AFL, or the ADL, came in last year, I think, or the year before. So we've had different speakers come in, and I invite every year the Public Safety Board and the HRC members to come and sit in that training. As far as the disparity index, ever since I've been an officer, and the mayor helped author that statute years and years ago. So if you go back historically and look at those numbers, Blue Springs, and even when I was in Oak Grove, you'd have one number one year, high, low, and it frustrates me as an administrator, because if I take a test and I fail it or I get a certain score, okay, tell me how I can improve. How can I affect those numbers? Training, you know, and they say, well, just don't stop black motorists. Well, okay, well, that's not a realistic thing, you know, so tell me how I can change that, because we do internal checks every year. We look at every officer and who they're stopping and why they're stopping, not just black motorists, but maybe Hispanic or female motorists. Why are they, you know, and what's the outcome? Are they doing more searches or not? And that population that they're basing that on is your driving population 16 years and older. It's not just the population of Blue Springs. So Interstate 70, Highway 50, Highway 7, the school district, if you think about our daily population, how many of those are actually residents based on that driving age? So, because you may have students from Lee Summit, people that work here from Independence, there's a lot of fluctuations in that. A lot of people come here to shop or to eat. So I always, every year I say in that report that, hey, we're on Interstate I-70. We're here, we do this, we have shopping districts. So, you know, that affects our disparity numbers. But we train, we go over that. So if you look at 10 years of history, or even longer, I think it's 20, I've showed this sheet to the mayor, and every year our number changes. It goes up, it goes down, and there's no rhyme or reason. And I'm not educated enough to know the math behind how they figure out the disparity index. So I agree with you, though. It's an issue, and it's an issue we face every year, and it's something that we don't take lightly. And as the mayor said, if we have an issue, we address it. And as far as like a whistleblower type protection, that's something that when that happened in Minneapolis and those officers were standing around and allowed that to happen, every officer here recognized that that was wrong. And I don't care if you have a day on the department or an hour on the department or 10 years, somebody should step up. And Captain Sergeant can attest that we tell our folks, if you see something wrong, get that officer out of the situation and address it. So I hope that, knock on wood, that something like that wouldn't happen here, that we would have protection for people that want to stand up and come tell me that something's wrong. As far as the blue line flag, those are good notes. I've seen that. There's a version for the fire department with a red line. I think I saw the other day a rainbow flag, and it was the same concept, and there have been some others. I never thought about that on the vest, though, so I understand that. There has been over the years a culture of silence. If you go back in the 60s and the 70s, who were the people that had to enforce the Jim Crow laws and all the laws and that were unfair and not right? Police department did, you know, and sometimes they did it willingly and sometimes they didn't, or not willingly. But we bear that, so we're trying to change that culture of silence, and it does become a us versus them, and that's why we try to get officers out on bikes, out on foot, out of the cars, because. And I'm going to go, maybe I'm talking too much, but I'm going to do it anyway. In the history of policing, you see these stages. In the 1920s and 30s, the officers were working beats, and then technology comes along, like the mayor mentioned, cell phones change everything. cars, radios. These officers got in their cars. They never got out. They went to their calls, and then they got in their cars, and they lost that connection. And then you have the 80s and the 90s roll along, and community policing and problem-oriented policing comes about, and they're trying to get the officers back into the public and back into the community so you can build that trust. So we try to be very transparent, Mayor mentioned that, and we try to build that trust with the community here in Blue Springs through our Citizens Police Academies and our boards and commissions and the things that we do as a department that aren't necessarily traditional law enforcement. They're more your cookies and Kool-Aid type stuff, but it's needed and it helps build trust. So having a flag, we'll take a look at that. The flag means family for us, like it would mean for fire department or for anybody else, but you're right, and I get that, so I appreciate that.
Let me add two brief things to what the chief has just said. Yeah, I am one of the sponsors of the bill on racial profiling when I was in the House of Representatives. So that's kind of near and dear to me as well. But 1 year, and I'm not sure if it was after Chief Muntz became chief or it was Chief McCoy at the time, Blue Springs was recognized as one of the cities as a model. Was it after you had become chief?
No, it was during Chief
McCoy. Yeah, they came and did a story on Blue Springs on how Blue Springs was really doing what it needed to do. And we were a model for other cities, and it was published in some publication. I don't remember which one, but it's again, those numbers. We have the conversation every year after the number comes out, and those numbers do fluctuate. And I don't know what we can do to change it. The legislature would have to do that, and I know they've looked at it since the initial bill passed, and we just want it to be more reflective of what we're doing, so people would get a clearer picture. If there's some things we need to be doing differently, then we certainly have to take a look at changes. But right now, again, he mentioned it, being an accredited department, and there are not very many in the United States. How many is that, Chief? Of the whole United States, there's not a whole bunch. And in Missouri, I think we're only the third or fourth or something.
Maybe in 10, but there's more, but I don't know nationally.
Okay.
But
yeah, so there's an extensive process to where they talk to me, they talk to everybody to try to get a feel for what our department is doing before they get that accreditation. And even notice it's on our cars. And that's kind of a badge of honor that we are going through some things that we should be doing to be a good police department. We're not perfect, we can't walk on water, but we try. Yes.
I just want to address, you're talking about percentages and numbers. They can be kind of dangerous sometimes because you are looking at a percentage, I don't know how they're basing that on, maybe pullovers, but what are the reasons for those? So maybe somebody's license plate is expired, or, it could be run a whole gamut. So I think it's not necessarily chasing somebody down because they are a criminal, but it could be because your blinker light's not working. I think we have to be very careful when we talk about the percentages and the numbers. There's all numbers behind numbers, so to speak. So I think it's important to recognize that.
And I would understand like a 0.5 difference if you're just like saying, there's different things. And I get that.
They're yelling at us.
Yeah, they can't hear you. If you can get up to the podium. Thank you.
I would understand like a 0.5 difference if we're just like, you can understand fluctuations, and I get all that. I really do. But, Kansas City is only sitting at 1.5, like I was saying. Our numbers for Blue Springs have actually gone up since last year's. Mm-hmm. I know you can't just focus on the numbers, but there's got to be something behind the numbers. And it's how everybody's raised. I mean, a 3 to 4 hour training each year is not going to change how you were raised and how you view people of a different color. It's just not. And I get that. But there's got to be something that we can do to get those numbers down at least a little bit to where it's like, on par with the state at least. And
And I feel your frustration because I look at that every year because I'm not making excuses. The numbers are what they are.
and I mean, I drive 7 all the time.
And if I
And 9 out of 10 times when I see somebody pulled over, they're black. I don't know what it is. I don't know why they're pulled over or anything else like that, but it blows me away, and it's kind of, it's tough to see, like, you know, because, like, you know, my kids play sports and there's not a whole lot of black kids on those teams and things like that. You see the racial differences in Blue Springs. I know we can't change any of that, obviously, but to see that higher number pulled over on Highway 7 than I do anybody else, it blows me away.
Duly noted, and it's something that we look at, so I appreciate your comment.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to introduce Dr. Warren Hayes. He's the Vice President of the Instruction of Student Services at MCCKC Blue River and a Blue Springs resident. And so I think many of you are aware of him. So at this point, I'll let him share some of the issues or the concerns they have there with children coming from the Blue Springs School District and Independence School District to their school and what they are doing to help make that transition smoother and better for people in our community.
Thank you for having me. I'd like to acknowledge our campus president, Dr. Thomas Meyer in the back, president of MCC Blue River. One of the things that I thought about, reflecting on some of the things that the mayor had said as well. At the community college, I was talking with a colleague, and one of the articles he's written recently is Law Enforcement, Education and Training, a review of the literature and critical analysis. So some of the things that we're looking at the Blue River campus, we have the Public Safety Institute where we train law enforcement, fire, and EMS. We're trying to infuse and look at cultural competency and anti-bias training so that we can have a better prepared cadet officer when they come to the respective law enforcement and police venues. I often think about something you said, Mayor. I have an 18-year-old son, just graduated from Lee Summit West, and I give him the talk, and one of the things that he said until he got a little older and started saying it, oh, you need to stop talking about this civil rights stuff. This is past, you know, because, you know, they're the millennials and, you know, they don't think things are as bad as they were until they start seeing reality. The other thing you mentioned that kind of touched me is the public, private, and even the non-profit sectors, the glass cliff and those aggressive things. And I have a candid conversation with my president about the way I think I need to approach, you know, some faculty and staff. I don't want to be appeared as the angry black man. So we always have to have those things in the back of our minds. So what you said kind of resonated with me, but I'm fortunate to have a president that's open. And I think for all of the struggles and the challenges that we have, we need allies that are not always of color to kind of advocate for us. And I appreciate, you know, the things that we're able to do as a team at the campus there. But as I think about, you know, some of the things that our youth are experiencing, I reflect on some of the conversations that my son has had as he's going on school. It's the N-word on the bus he's heard. I can reflect on coming out one of the school board meetings in this service area, and me and another African American administrator, we were called the N-word, and a car just passed by us. So it's still here, but I think as we deal with the generational shift, we have the silent generation, the boomers, Gen X, millennials, and those. I see it start to shift as the age shifts. So some of it is going to have to be aged out over time, I think. I know that some of the younger generations, unless, as this gentleman said, it's a learned behavior when you're in your household, but I think it's shifting. I had a teacher that told one of my son's friends, who's a Caucasian, you don't need to be a hand around him, you got much more in your life. Now, they don't know that my son's father has a bachelor's, 2 masters, a doctorate, and a postdoc, but they assume that he shouldn't be hanging with these black kids because he has more for their life than the kids of color. So when you have this kind of mentality in the school systems as well, it's problematic. But we try to reach students where they are. We try to create different diversity and cultural competency types of environments at our college there. And we're always constantly tweaking, trying to make it more engaging, more welcoming, more opportunities for all of Blue Springs and the service areas that we face there. And I have a brother-in-law who's been a service law enforcement officer for 20 plus years. And going back to, again, some things that Mayor says, promotion inside the ranks. It's hard for people of color a lot of times, the challenges that they face, certain tests and things that are required. And if you don't go along with the system, sometimes you get pushed out. So you have some systematic things that we have to address there. So those are a few things that I wanted to discuss as we get this conversation going. But knowing that our college, we're trying to train the next generation of law enforcement officers to be more culturally competent, sensitive, and looking at those all-around, wrap-around services and trainings to better prepare them to deal with diverse in a global world. So I'll stop right there until we get some more into the conversation.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. At this time, I would like to invite Dr. Nagumsi an opportunity to speak if you'd like to, or ask any questions of anybody or anything at this point. He is the HRC consultant, and he also works with Blue Springs Police Department in the city on cultural and diversity training and other issues. So I didn't know if you wanted to speak or say anything.
Not tonight. I do not have specifics
Okay.
for tonight. Thank you
You're welcome.
for the opportunity.
All right. Then at this point, what I'd like to do is I'd like to open the floor up at this time for anybody. If anybody out there has any questions that they would like to present to anybody that spoke today, this evening, or to the city officials, if anybody is interested in speaking, raise your hand if you're interested at this point, if you're not already spoken. Okay. Yes, ma'am. What is your name, young lady?
I'm Keisha Mason.
Could you come up to the microphone so we can hear you? And please introduce yourself again. I'm sorry.
Good evening. I'm Keisha Mason, and thank you for having me.
Oh,
First, I'll thank you,
closer
Mayor.
to the mic.
Can you hear me?
no.
No? Back up. Right here? Better? Okay, sorry. I'm Keisha Mason, and thank you guys for having me. Thank you, Mayor, Chairman, thank you. I am a mother of a 23-year-old black son, a 19-year-old black daughter, and a 10-year-old daughter. And I like to say, when you guys spoke of the talk, I too had to have the talk with my children, especially my 23-year-old black son when he started driving. And not only did I have to have the talk about police officers, because we're facing two things here when you're young and black and you're male. It's not just the officers, but I had to have the talk about my black son with his own people, his own race. And so that's two things that we're fighting as black moms when we want to raise successful black boys. We have to say, hey, this is how you conduct yourself when you get pulled over. And we also have to say, hey, stay out the city during these certain times, or don't go to the city, And so that's what I had to teach my son. My son, he's one who made it out. He listened, he's very successful at this time. My 19-year-old daughter, she's a graduate of Blue Springs High School. And so things that you young people spoke of, she spoke of those same things as well. And I'd like to say that we did not have any issues with the administration. The administration of Blue Springs was awesome, amazing. We didn't experience any type of racism on our end. However, we can't change the mindset of the students and what they learn at home. And what we tried to do with the administration is say they need more color, more culture, more diversity in their schools, especially the high school, because she said the same thing. When children come from the city school and they come to Blue Springs, it's a culture shock for them. My daughter, she grew up in the schools where she was probably like the only black kid in a classroom. But she had friends that came to Blue Springs from the city, and she had to like coach them along because they was ready to, throw in the towel. So I totally understand where you young people are coming from. We need more diversity in the schools for those young people and parents like me that they're trying to get their kids away. They want better. And not only that, but my daughter, my 10-year-old, in her classroom is sad because she was in 2nd grade and a young student next to her asked her, "Why do you talk like that?" "What do you mean, why do you talk like that?" She asked, "What do you mean? Why do you sound black?" Well, that's my color. This is things that kids are learning at home. So it's not just the policing, it's more of community involvement. Because I even see in my neighborhood, my neighbors look at me like, "What are you doing living here?" Well, I work every day. I can afford to live here, So it's more about community involvement, more about accepting us. As black people, we are not going nowhere. We have arrived, we are here, and we are here to stay. And it's accepting us. And I think if we can all get involved, including the officers and the schools, more diversity in the communities, we will get more African Americans to the community. They're not here because they don't feel like they're safe here. They're not here because they feel like they're going to have more issues here. But if we can get that, then I think we will be A-okay. Thank you.
Let me add something to what you just said. I believe that you are who you are because of where you were when. Saying that, and it's no disrespect to any mayors that preceded me, but when I became mayor in 2008, one of the things I noticed, there were no blacks on any boards or commissions in this city. I changed that. You've got blacks on just about every board. I'm constantly recruiting. So if there are people out there who are interested, I say, hey, fill out an application and get it to me. You can do it online. Because I think you get the very best when you have diversity. Not everybody thinking alike. Then you're gonna get the very best. So I appreciate what you said. I'm gonna tell you one quick thing and then I'm gonna shut up because I don't wanna hog this whole hearing. One of my best friends in Blue Springs, he went with me years ago. I was recognized as one of the black achievers in Kansas City by the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And we had a big function down at the Marriott, downtown Kansas City. And the room was full of black people. And that's what you would expect. Well, my friend is white that lives out here, one of my best friends. I took him as my guest, he and his wife and me and my wife. And he said, "Do you feel uncomfortable when you're around a bunch of white people?" And I said, "No, I'm very comfortable. I'm used to it." He said, "I just felt strange. Me being one of a few black people in this room full of black people at a conference that's got 700 people there, and most of them black." So again, those are those cultural differences that we have to be able to accept and overcome and understand. That, hey, we're all God's people. We're all, you cut me, I'm gonna read blood. I cut my council member over here, you gonna bleed red. I mean, we're all the same. It's just that we come from a different culture and we have to learn to embrace each other's differences. And then we're not gonna have the problems. We won't even have to have these forums if we be able to get that understanding to people. So anyway, I'll shut up.
Well, we appreciate your input, sir, everybody's input tonight. You know what, for some closing thoughts, we had expected more people, and hopefully people are watching this at home and on Facebook and are watching this. And because as I passed out posters for this the last couple of days, I've got the impression that there would be more people here than have shown up this evening. However, I did make them aware that they could watch it on television live if they couldn't be here, and some questions if they had anything to do. But I want to thank everybody that's come out to speak this evening at this panel.
Gino, can
Yes,
I
sir.
interrupt you just for a second before you do? Are you doing closing?
Yes, yes, sir.
I wanted to go to Miranda because we're doing Facebook Live, correct? And I thought maybe you'd like to see if there were any questions out there on Facebook.
Is there any questions out there?
Yes, we have a couple.
Okay.
One of them that we just got is, I would like to know where and how aggressively are your sourcing techniques to identify and locate police officers of color who are qualified? How committed is this department to this, and is it a true priority?
Ooh, that's an awesome question, because I wrote a note here that if Gina would give me a chance, I had a point I wanted to bring up, because you brought up if you want to bring more people to Blue Springs that are black or any race, actually. So it got me to thinking about what I tell our folks, because right now, recruiting for police departments is challenging. And I'm not just talking about police officers. We are struggling to get detention officers or jailers, animal control officers. We have 2 vacancies in our dispatch center right now, and we are constantly trying to recruit not only for police officer positions but for the civilian positions, and it's just difficult. Right now, if you're, I don't care if you're black, Hispanic, and or Asian, if you have some good qualities that would be a good police officer or a banker or an attorney or a doctor, there are a lot of people that would like to have you, and that I'm competing with, that would pay more, have more benefits, and you don't get yelled and screamed at and lied to. So, it's a little challenging to recruit. When we do recruit, I ask our officers, Captain Sergeant used to be in charge of recruiting through our community youth outreach unit. When we send people to job fairs, I go to our officers and I say, look, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but you're black, you're Hispanic, you're Asian. If you want more people that look like you to work for this department, I need your help. Will you go to this career fair or this job fair with an officer and work a table? Will you help us do a video? Will you be seen? And if you tell me no, I won't be offended. But it's challenging to recruit. It's challenging to retain good employees. And promotion is challenging. The mayor and I have discussions on this all the time. And our command staff, our supervisors, we have 1 white female, and that's our command staff and our supervisors. In our 2019 numbers, if you'll let me go into this real quick, based on the census, the service population of Blue Springs, these are a little bit old numbers, 81% white, 8% black, non-Hispanic, 5% Hispanic, Latino, and then 6% other. So if you look at our sworn officer strength, we are 89% Caucasian, so we're fairly close. 5% black, non-Hispanic, 4% Hispanic, and then 2% other. And those numbers fluctuate all the time. We have a sworn strength of 101 now, and I think we have 4 African-American officers or black officers, 3 Hispanic, 1 Asian, and two other right now as of August. I've always been told throughout my career as administrator that your department should reflect the community. And I think we're pretty close to that, so I'm pretty proud of that, but it's a struggle to retain that, and it's a struggle to keep that going. I think I've answered that question, I hope. But we recruit, we send letters to places like Lincoln University in Jeff City. We send letters to all the churches. We post in different publications, hey, we're accepting officers. Any help anybody could give me to recruit, we try to get the information out to the high schools. We have 4 people right now at MCC Blue River going to the cadet to their police academy. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes this year. But we go to the community colleges. We try to go all over and try to recruit. So any help anybody could give me, I'm willing to take it.
Okay, we've got another one. Did the BSPD make any attempt to meet with the protesters and stand with them when there were protests on 7 Highway? The protesters made the effort to go out and speak up. It would mean something more if the police came out to tell them they were hearing them.
We did. When we heard there were going to be protests at the old Winsteads, we knew, and there were some at Old Mill Park as well. I encouraged officers to go by, get out, talk to them. I knew we weren't going to have the problems they were having in Kansas City at the time, but we, it was a funny story. I was out of town visiting relatives on the St. Louis side, and we were coming back, and we were driving back, my wife and I, and there was a protest at Winstead's. And we knew it was going to happen as a planned event, so I asked a lieutenant and said, hey, you're on duty that day, would you stop by and visit? So my wife and I drove by, and I said, I'm just going to drive by and see what it is. And there was a crowd of people there, and I saw a lieutenant, a sergeant, and an officer all out talking to him. And it couldn't have been, I told my wife, I said, well, those two right there are going to talk their ears off. Those protesters are never going to get away. And they brought them water. So I stopped by and talked to our officers real quick. I wasn't in uniform, so I didn't make an appearance. And then we had another protest of one person who set up an event like Gina did, and she thought a lot of people were going to be out there, and it ended up being me and her son and another officer. And then her sister showed up. So we were there for a little bit. So yes, we did send people out. We did try to communicate, because I think that's the way you stop the problems that were occurring in Kansas City. Because there's, I'm getting on a soapbox here, but there's a difference between a protest and then being a criminal and doing criminal things. Go ahead.
I can vouch for that. We did have a lieutenant, a sergeant. What was the third one?
An officer.
And an officer, and they definitely applauded us for making sure we looked up the laws. We knew our curfew. We knew what to do and what not to do to make sure we had a peaceful protest and been able to get our voices heard and seen without stopping any traffic or causing any commotion. One of the officers came and shook my hand, took a picture with me, and then another officer, we were slowly shutting down because it was getting dark. So he rallied the last bit of people and told us that there was numerous of calls. There was numerous of calls wanting us to be shut down, saying that we were harassing the highway, which I don't know how you harass a highway, and that they wanted us to shut down. And he said that he could proudly and politely tell them that it's nothing that they could do about it because it was their legal right. And I appreciated that because I didn't know how it was going to be. I'm gonna be real. When me and Raven planned it out, I was a little nervous. I was a little scared because I didn't know if we was going to get shut down or we were going to be able to do what we wanted to do. And it was the start of our goal. We wanted to have a second one, but due to Kansas City weather, it didn't happen. But next we have in the works is a committee amongst teens, youth, and to make equality and peace amongst ourselves, amongst our school districts, amongst our community. Because it's not just in the school districts; it's in the grocery stores, it's in the pharmacies, it's in the neighborhoods. She just had a birthday. The police got called on us for having a water fight in the front yard at 7 o'clock. We can't have a good time because of people in the community. It is taught in there, and I do feel like that the youth in our age group doesn't necessarily see the importance of what's going on around here until it's brought to national attention or social media. If it's not a trend, they don't care. And that's an issue because back in the day, back in the 60s and 70s, it wasn't just the elderly. It was started off with the youth. It was teens coming out of high school, it was college students, it was 20, 30-year-olds. They were all in those marches. So why can't we be the next generation? Why can't we fight too?
Speaking of him saying we wanted to fight too as well, I wanted to say to Ms. Keisha in the back that I definitely agreed to what you said. And you said something about how do we bring our community together? Because it goes further than just being black and having issues with our police. How do we bring our community together? And that's been very heavy on my mind because I know for me and Chris, we've seen a lot of positive comments back from the lieutenant. We've seen stuff from Ms. Courtney over here, and we got a lot of good feedback, but we really got negative feedback from our Blue Springs community on the Blue Springs community page. And this is an awareness page, and Awareness is to bring awareness to a situation. We thought that we did something very positive, but it seemed that our community didn't like what we did. And it was all, well, you go back to where you came from, or it was, well, not all, or it's all lives matter. And we understand that all lives matter, and that's where we're trying to get to. So I do want to know to you guys, how do we move forward with this? How do we bring our communities together? Because I do understand that trying to involve more Black people, that does good, but that doesn't solve our issue. So how do we bring our community together?
Well, I think you have to continue to do what you're doing. I don't pay any attention to these community things because you catch ignorant people on there talking about stuff they don't have a clue of what they're talking about. Work toward the people that are positive and are looking for change, and pretty soon people are going to start ignoring these people that don't know what they're talking about. I don't get on Facebook and start debating anything. You never win debating somebody that don't know what they're talking about. So you just focus on the positive stuff and let them get out there and talk, and pretty soon people are going to take note that they don't know what they're talking about. They're just out there spewing hate. So you just stay the course and keep doing those positive things.
Were there any other questions from Facebook? Oh, okay.
Ellie Welchert, citizen of Blue Springs, and on the Board of Public Safety. We talked about the lack of, I thought I turned it off. We talked about the lack of police. We talked about the lack of teachers of color in our community. You have a 10-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 23-year-old. Anybody really willing to be a teacher or to be a policeman? Either of you, any of that in your plans for the future? This is where it comes from. This is how we get these teachers. Sorry, I'm wearing my grandson's mask. This is how we get there, is you guys take that step forward to either police department or to the school district. So please keep that in mind and encourage other people to be part of that. That's part of the community. Do not listen to the naysayers out there. They don't know what they're talking about, as the mayor said. Keep your path forward and know that you've got a lot of supporters in the community.
Were there any other questions from Facebook?
I don't have any other specific questions just yet, but I just wanted to say that we've had about 75 to 85 people watching consistently through Facebook. And there was just a few comments that there's an interest in getting the school district involved in these types of conversations and how we can involve that, and then also where we can take this conversation forward through policy. So I'm just generalizing here, but those were the general sentiments that we were getting on Facebook.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So one of our goals when doing the protest was because me and Raven, our parents are real strict, and the whole things that was going on in the plaza and in the city, they didn't want us a part of, but they still wanted us to fight and be our voices heard. So we looked at it as an opportunity to not only, have our voices heard, but bring awareness to our own city. And I was shocked because I didn't realize how many people had a story just like mine and just like Raven's. And one of our goals out of that protest was to potentially get the attention of our district, because before that, they wasn't listening. Before our protest, they weren't listening. We've reached out. We've had people that have graduated 3 years prior that still are fighting for the district, fighting with the district about laws that they've been trying to push, and they're just now getting results. So we were wanting to get their attention, and successfully Raven has put together a committee at Blue Springs High School, but I have yet to succeed on that at Blue Springs South. It's different. we're the minority at Blue Springs South. They're kind of evenly proportioned. They got a bigger numbers, which is why when who was it? Miss Keisha has said it shouldn't just be our color, or was it Dr.
Haynes.
What's his name?
Haynes.
Dr. Haynes, he said it shouldn't just be our people of color. It should also be diverse, and that's a struggle. That's really a struggle at Blue Springs South. That's a struggle in the community, regardless. So, maybe you can help us with that. Whoever said that question, that to get the Blue Springs School District involved and be able to hear us out and have a conversation, because that's what we've been wanting. That was our goal.
And I can't speak for South, but I do know that, because I go to Blue Springs definitely has put things in place so that our students are being heard. They've actually put a group together of Black kids, and we just continue to invite our friends and try to expand the group and try to bring more diversity to our group as to where we're bringing awareness to Black people and the issues that our school faces. So I do know that Blue Springs is trying to figure out ways to change things up so that we aren't facing those same issues anymore.
It doesn't just have to start in the schools. If they don't want to listen, we can make them listen with just ourselves. We can rally up. My name's Chris Green. That's my Facebook name. Her name's Raven Wright. That's her Facebook name. We can rally up. We can still have conversations and build our own committee.
So before we cycle off, I was looking at the State of Black America. Urban League comes out with this every year, and they have 19 lessons of COVID-19. I'm just going to read the first 3. Racism is the pandemic within the pandemic. Bias in healthcare is both implicit and explicit, and leadership matters. So those are 3 things of the 19 that they've talked about. So we need to kind of just look at this at a larger, holistic view, because it hits several spheres in our society.
Any other comments?
Gino, I'd like to say something real quick. I wanted to thank you for having this tonight and inviting me, but I also want to introduce Captain Jeff Sargent. Most of you know him. He's been heavily involved with community youth outreach. He's been on the department for a long time. I have asked him to be the liaison to the HRC. One of the things I try to do is every so often, every couple of years, is change that role so that all of our the command staff gets an opportunity to do that, because I think they grow and learn from that role. And Stacy, Deputy Chief Edwards, was in that role for a while, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity with the transition in the board and new council member and all that we do that. So Jeff Sargent will be your new liaison to the HRC.
Great. Did you want to speak? It's Tamara Bueno.
I'm a little nervous and a little heated about a couple things. First of all, Chris, I am so sorry about your introduction to Blue Springs, and I hope that situation eventually gets resolved and removed from your record. I can't understand why it's not removed if you were proven innocent in that situation. So I'm sorry that you've had to experience that.
Yeah.
Secondly, regarding the AG report, this is what I'm a little heated about. Numbers can be interpreted in lots of different ways. They typically don't lie. I have the formula for how that index is calculated. I am shaking like a leaf because I'm so upset. On that report, if you look at the report, it breaks down the reasons for the pullovers. It's based on traffic stops, and it breaks down. So it's not like every time a black person was pulled over, it was because they had a busted tail light. That was not the situation.
I did not say that. I just said there were many reasons why people get pulled over.
There are many reasons.
So unless you know the reasons behind the numbers,
they're in the report.
You can't make a good valued opinion. That is
the
all
reasons
I said.
are in the report.
Well, All I said was you have to have the basics behind the report.
The report is pretty thorough.
I don't doubt that.
My suggestion would be that there's some deep research done about this. I'm sure there's communities across the country who have improved their index and lowered that number, and maybe that would be a good task for the HRC to start doing some research on that.
And I would appreciate working with them. Is Missouri the only one of the few states that does that?
You know what, I don't know that.
So in my research, I haven't had much luck nationally, and when I talk to other departments across the state, I get the same kind of sense of frustration. So I'd be willing to work with anybody on that to help us understand, to help us improve. So if there's somebody better at math than I am, but all I know is, and I'm biased, I get it, but we have a great department and we have a good group of officers. And what I see every day, them doing their jobs and making traffic stops, isn't reflected in that number. And that, when I mentioned I was frustrated, it frustrates me because I can't prove they're doing right. All I get from the state is you're not doing it right. But how do I change it? Everything we're trying to do, we haven't changed it. I mean, the number fluctuates. So I'm open to suggestions at this point.
And I think I understand that they're starting to look at some different data and analyze the data a little differently.
Yeah, they included, for
report.
example, zip codes, so that we could, so the argument of population driving index or driving population and where they're from, and because other communities are the same way. You know, you're in Branson, and if your number's high, well, you know, if you're going by resident population over 16, there's a lot of people that go to Branson. So, you know.
There's also a part of that report that I think breaks it down, and I haven't looked at that part, but it breaks it down between residents and non-residents.
Yeah, exactly. And they started doing that this past year, and our numbers still didn't. So I'm like, my argument just went out the window. So I don't know. You know, I still think there's some things there, and anything we can do to help. You know, but I just know that the numbers do not reflect when we check our officers, when we do our things we do, that they're not. I know what we're doing, and it's not reflected in the number. But I'm biased, so I admit that.
That's all.
Thank you. I think right now I'm going to turn it over to Lucas, who would like to speak. HRC member.
Okay. Well, thank you for all of you for sharing this. I just had a couple thoughts as I was listening, and just to start with the most recent, I appreciated Chief Muntz sharing, you know, the words I'm biased, and my argument just went out the window. Those show vulnerability and the willingness to reflect on your own biases, and that's really where change starts. I know that to have high schoolers up here advocating for change is not easy. It takes a lot out of you to continue to have this conversation over and over again. So, you know, a little bit of vulnerability, a little bit of humility to recognize our own biases. And I recognize, you know, I'm speaking to people whose skin color looks more like mine, that it's not easy to recognize. You know, all of us don't want to continue having this conversation. We've reflected on how generations have passed and how these things, yeah, there's been progress, but we are continuing to have these conversations. And I hear people who look like me say, you know, racism isn't real anymore. We don't have these kinds of problems in our city. And it's so easy to dismiss. It's so easy to look aside and to ignore the realities that people experience who don't look like us, the people whose lives are different than us. And so I just wanted to again thank Mayor Ross and the Chief and those who have spoken for their vulnerability and their courage, because this is a starting point. This is not going to go away anytime soon. We need to have this conversation ongoing. And I also wanted to end just to let those of you know who are continuing to talk about connectedness that unfortunately the coronavirus has made connecting with one another all the more difficult. We believe that this room would be packed if not for some of those factors. And as we as a community commission go forward. We presented to the city council just last week about how we can come together and bring citizens together through education initiatives, through social events in our community, where we can have these kinds of conversations openly, not in conflict like you see on Facebook, but respectfully and with dignity, and connect with one another, and admit, as the chief just modeled for us, when we don't know something or when we might have been wrong. So that's really all I had to share, is just appreciation for those of you who show that courage and vulnerability tonight and going forward.
I just, first of all, want to, for the students that are here and everybody that showed up today, I just want to let you know that we did send in invitations out to the school district, to the superintendent of the school district. We did send invitations out to the city council members. We did send members out to the, who all do we send them to? We sent them to everybody. The Chamber of Commerce, we sent them to everybody. So we did provide them that opportunity. However, for whatever reasons, they chose not to be here in this particular forum, and that's fine. The mayor had already decided in Chief Muntz that if the school district didn't want to be involved in this particular forum, that we were still going to move ahead with it and move on. People are talking about how can you move forward. I will tell you that the Human Relations Commission meets the third Tuesday of every month from 6:30 to 8, and you can come and to the meetings. You can look up the agenda online, or if you would want to be on the agenda or something, you know, you can text in and ask that you could be put on the agenda to speak, or you can just show up as a guest speaker, or as a citizen, and still be allowed an opportunity to speak. Is there anybody, Shauna, do you have anything that you would like to say?
Let me know if you can hear me. I think I want to say thank you to everyone that came out today and gave your experience. As a Black woman myself, it's definitely a lifestyle that I've felt more that I've always had like a culturally diverse background. So I was never around just all Black, all white, all Mexican, et cetera, et cetera. So coming from a culturally diverse perspective from California, I kind of look at it from a different aspect, but I understand the struggle on both sides. I think a lot of times we focus on more so of it being a Black-white issue, but really, I think when you focus on making it black and white, it becomes more racially divided. So I would like for us to have more things like where we're inviting all cultures to, be a part and participate and come out and use their voices. And if you have suggestions, if there's something out there that you could suggest as far as us making our city more harmonious, then I definitely would love to hear that. And I think all of us here would love to hear, not to take away from, Black lives, and I'm not doing that at all, because we all do matter, but Black lives matter as well. So I just would like to, say thank you for coming out, and I certainly appreciate this meeting.
You have anything you'd like to say, Courtney?
Also, just thank you all for being here. And I guess my bias is working with young people, so I just have been so impressed with everything that you all have been doing. And at MCC, I've just been so happy to see how immediately reactive and proactive Blue River's been also at just having these conversations. And like you said, the conversations are not easy. And I think that the thing that sometimes we don't understand is that it takes a lot of work. And I'll say right now, for white people right now, it's our time to do the work. It's our time to start examining where we're at and how we're contributing. And I think Mayor Ross really said something, and it was just kind of tucked into some of those great comments you said about the systemic issues that we're facing. And so when we have a meeting like this, or we have something we're talking about, I think it's important that we realize that it's not necessarily about saying you said this or you thought that. It's about looking, how can we help our officers who are entwined in this system that was created long before they were ever officers, see some of things or learn something new or find something out. Those are ways I think we as a community can start coming together, because those are ways that we can look at how we can start breaking down the individual things, and how we can start seeing how systems that are in place all the time affect individuals differently. And so I think, COVID, we've heard a lot of like, we're all in the same boat. And then you see like, yeah, but the boats are, rowing in a different direction, or we don't all have the same amount of oars. And I think those are things that are important to just keep in mind. And I just really look forward to seeing, where we can go with some of the ideas that you have, and then how we can get, all areas of the community involved in this. And just so you know, I did hear back from the Chamber of Commerce. The only reason why they weren't able to come tonight is they're actually presenting on another topic somewhere else in town tonight. And they're excited and launching some things within the Chamber to try and work within the business community. And I think we've talked about trying to look at ways that we can support in continuing to, recruit and support minority-owned women and minority-owned businesses here in Blue Springs. So I just thank you all for being here, and I hope that over the next, months, years, especially once we can get out of our houses, we can keep working towards these goals in the city and in the area.
Anybody else got anything? Okay. Well, at this point, I would like to, first of all, also thank all the people, the technical people back there that have made this show work. I want to thank you back there. And then we also want to thank the folks that watched on Facebook this evening as well. And hopefully we can move forward, and this will lead to, some good things happening in our community. And once again, I just want to reiterate that the HRC does meet the third Tuesday evening of the month. It's from 6:30 to 8 p.m. You're welcome to come. You can look online in advance for the agenda. And as we move forward, I know that with some changes, we got some new commissioners coming. The mayor will be appointing some new commissioners to get our numbers up to where they need to be. And we just look forward to moving forward and hopefully seeing things get better in our community. That's all I got, unless somebody else has anything else. And I want to thank you all once again for coming. I don't have a gavel, so I can't say. Thank you.